Welcome to California Life Podcast. Today, I am very happy to have us joined by Senor Nuno Martins, entrepreneur, inventor, scholar at UC Berkeley, and as I have just noticed, a man who doesn't age. Nuno, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you so much, Victor. A pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is mine. We met back in 2019. It was a tech expo here in California, in Silicon Valley, and I remember I was hosting the evening gala, and you were the only one person in the room, um, full of engineers and entrepreneurs whose face and eyes um, were so active and so live that I couldn't, I just not notice you was impossible. Um, Today we'll be talking about you, and our second half of our episode we will dedicate to the Unicorn Summit, which you are actively organizing.
Exactly.
So, what brings you into the business entrepreneurship? And I've read that you are running and you've ran a multi-million-dollar companies, including you're the biggest real estate developer in Portugal.
Well, we're not the biggest. We're on the real estate space. We have more than 1,300 apartments in development right now. We are indeed a significant player in the real estate space in Portugal. We're real estate promoters, and we focus our developments on premium quality with affordable pricing. We saw a gap in the market. So
Mhm.
one of the things of remember looking back into 2019 when I was at CVF and we met,
Yeah.
my focus, my vision has always been how can I make the world a better place? And in my company, Lux Premium, we realized that Portugal needed high quality construction at affordable prices. That was the challenge. How can we bring high quality construction to Portugal with an affordable price tag?
Hmm.
And the reason why we want to do that, it's because your home impacts your health and your quality of life
Right.
significantly,
Right.
right? So it's about building healthy homes. When our company is called Lux Premium, it's not about luxury. It's about premium quality, a
Hmm.
premium quality of life. How can you build a home that has a great amount of light that impacts your health, right? How can you optimize your home to make your home a healthy home?
Hmm.
Because you spend a lot of your time in your home, sleeping, eating, living with your family. So if you build the home to your quality of life, you do improve your life and your loved one's life significantly.
Hmm.
So we believe that it's really important that the private space creates homes that improve the population quality of life. That's our mission at Lux Premium. How can we bring luxury, premium quality housing buildings typically to the population at affordable prices? So that's what drives us forward. That's our mission as a company.
Hmm.
Um, and then I think there are two main pillars if you want to grow your company. First of all, is honesty. You got to be transparent. You got to be honest with all the key players. If you're building a building with 20 apartments, you will be dealing with the municipalities, right? You need to understand how you can bring value to the local management, to the local municipalities in Portugal. You need to understand how you can bring value to the population, right? And you need to bring value to your customer and your partners in development. So business, in our perspective, both mine and my business partner, Fernando Matos, is how can we build a company, and that's what we're doing, that can, be fair with all the key players and obviously generate profit to grow and continue to spread and improve the quality of life of people, respecting all the key players in real estate development. So I would say this is talking a little bit about why we created the company and what are the main pillars of the company today.
Well, we definitely need you and your company with your values and pillars in the US, especially in California, with skyrocketing prices in real estate.
It's just
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's a great observation you did there. When I moved to the US the first time, more than a decade ago, I was surprised by the kind of construction. Typical construction is much lower quality and finishing than Portugal's construction, right? Although the prices are much higher, right? I do believe there's a need in the US for premium quality housing at affordable prices.
Oh, yes, yes. God bless your words. And not just California, I think it's all over. How did you get into real estate, first off? Building and managing and working with municipalities in terms of building over 1,000 apartments, it's already a pretty huge level, I would say. It's not like you're building a one-story house. How did you get into the business initially?
It all started back in 2009 when I was accepted at the NASA Research Center as one of the first students at Singularity University. An amazing program, and it really inspired me to look into how can we make a difference in the world, how can we make the world a better place for everyone, right? I'm mentioning this because my final project was about housing. How can we solve the housing problem around the world, right?
Mm.
We were looking into 3D printing of homes, and we believe in the future it may play a role if we 3D print homes. But there are many ways where you can improve the quality of housing and consequently improve people's quality of life. And back from 2009, I kept that mission and that vision. And so the focus was, how can I have an impact on the housing space? And when I met Fernando, my business partner, he had a lot of experience on the real estate. We shared the same values as entrepreneurs about honesty, respect for customers, respect for partners. And we realized that we believe that together we could have an impact. And so far, so good.
Well, thank God that you do have this success. Let's talk about your first project in real estate. When entrepreneurs or those who want to get into real estate, they would watch our interview, and that's, I think, that the most important question is, like, you would need some capital, you need some connections, you need both. I don't know. What was your path?
I already had some money that I gathered as an entrepreneur in other efforts. I was also a teaching fellow at the university. So it all started when I was 18 years old. I went to the university. In my second year as a student, I had great grades, good grades. And so I was invited to be a student and a teacher, an assistant teacher at the university. So I was a student on my third year, and I was also teaching the other classes.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I went on to build small companies, and I got some money, gathered some money. And then I used that money to leverage the first investment on the real estate space in the north of Portugal, in a small villa called Vila Nova de Cerveira.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we started with the first construction. The reason why we chose that particular place was that when you go to the real estate space, you need to see an opportunity. So we could build in Porto or Lisbon or Braga, but Vila Nova de Cerveira combined a set of characteristics that were very interesting. There was no recent construction for more than 17 years.
Wow.
When we met the municipality, there was no new buildings being built. They have two massive industrial areas, and the CEOs of the companies operating on those industrial areas were moving to Braga, so almost 1 hour drive to be able to have new construction and to live in a modern apartment. So after a study, we realized there was a big need locally, and it probably got a little forgotten because most construction was focused on Braga, Porto, Lisbon, the major cities. And so we saw a need and we realized we could fill that need. And that was the reason why we decided to invest there first.
How do you see the market in Portugal?
Yeah.
I've seen different financial reports, and sometimes, they say that markets in Portugal, Spain, Italy, they are pretty risky with, the paying ability. How do you see it being actually in it?
I think it's a massive business opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Portugal has free healthcare, great quality of life. It's a country in Europe, very peaceful, very secure, nearly zero criminality. And I've traveled the world delivering talks. You know that. So I'm an international speaker. I deliver talks, in Brazil, United States, Bulgaria, many other countries. And I realize the more I travel, the more I realize how Portugal is pretty unique, combining all of these factors. So if you bring into the equation the quality of life, the population, very friendly, because it's a country that lives a lot from tourism. So most people speak English. So the language barrier doesn't exist. The south of Portugal is very sunny and has a beautiful coastline. The south of Portugal is typically has a lot of tourists from the UK historically.
Mm-hmm.
So they retire and many of them come to Portugal. Great weather again, low cost of living, right? So the average salary is €1,000, €1,200. So that's very low cost if you come from a country like the US and you have some savings. Again, no language barrier because most Portuguese and most physical spaces are translated into English. Free healthcare, free education, sunny country, beautiful beach line. It's a small country also, pretty easy to move from coastline to the mountains. So after traveling the world quite a lot, I do see in Portugal a lot of potential to grow significantly still.
Well, for sure. I love Portugal. You don't need to sell Portugal to me. I love the country. It's on my map in terms of investment on my own. It's just, when you think of real estate development and investing in it, you think about, okay, if we develop, would we rent or would we better sell? How do we deal with taxes? By the way, in here, it's a big thing. When you buy a house, you still pay tons of taxes. It feels like you buy it and you still rent it. How is the policy in Portugal?
Yeah, well, taxation is quite heavy too, but it is what it is. I mean, it's business is about that. I mean, governments are our business partners, right? I said, my company and my business partner Fernando. The company is not mine and Fernando, it's mine, Fernando, and the government and the state, right? That's the social agreement we have whenever you are part of a country.
Mm-hmm.
The country is also a business partner of yours in your own company, right? And does his own thing. It is what it is. It's necessary. But again, the state also delivers free healthcare, free education. Well, what really concerns me in terms of the country's management is not the taxation, is how that money is being used for the benefit of the population, right?
Mm-hmm.
What really bothers me is corruption. I'm totally fine with paying whatever is necessary for taxes because if that money is used to give, young population a free education for all, if it is used to give proper healthcare, if it is used to create good infrastructure like roads, we are making a contribution to make the world a better place. In this particular case, to make Portugal a better place or any country, right?
Right.
The challenge with governments is corruption because the money we're paying in taxes is not being used. If it is taken by corruption, it's not being used to make the population, to give the population better quality of life, or to create a better world and a better country for everybody, right? So I think the main concern with taxation is not how much is the taxation rate or percentage. It's more about how is it being used, right? How is a country showing to the population that the money is being well used? I believe in a lot of transparency. I believe governments should have full transparency to the population. And I believe the citizens should have the right to see all the money being used and how it's being used. I typically give an example, which is if I own a company I have access to all my bank accounts and I can see every single cent or penny
Right.
that's being spent. I believe we should have that right with regards to governments, because all citizens are government shareholders,
Mhm.
mandatorily, right? We're all, shareholders of our country. So I believe we should have full transparency to all citizens. And citizens should have the right to understand and know clearly where the money is going for and how is it being spent.
Well, it was probably Nuno Martins, presidential candidate.
No,
Whenever,
I'm more into the entrepreneurial world, not connected
well,
with.
as we can see, we needed a good entrepreneur president, and we got him, Donald Trump. He's doing the job, and he's also a real estate developer. So you could see a little bit of a parallel line. From your side of taxes, I understand. You build it, you sell it, you pay tax. What about your customers, right? If, let's say, I would go and buy an apartment or a house, how is the policy in Portugal in regards with the real estate tax when you buy a piece of real estate?
Well, when you buy a piece of real estate, you have a set of taxes that you have to pay to the state, and you have an annual taxes that you pay.
Mhm.
It's called IMI. So you have an annual taxation. Essentially, you buy a home, but you're paying a rent. It's
Yeah.
a much smaller rent, but it's like that in most countries actually. So you annually have a payment. They call it IMI, and you have to make that payment. Again, it's much lower than renting a home, and you own the house. So if the house increases in price, you can sell it again. You can get some benefit out of there. Um, but again, I think the taxation in Portugal, even for the end customer, is similar to other countries.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't see it as a problem. I mean, we operate 100% transparent with the government. Again, as I said, our policy at Lux Premium, at our real estate company, is transparency to everybody, right? And honesty with everybody. Um, and that transparency means that obviously with the government, we have to be 100% transparent. We are. If they want to see our bank accounts, we open them. Every single movement is made via bank transfer. Everything is clear to everybody. Everybody knows what we sell, how much we sell for. It's full transparency, not just with governments, but with all the players, right?
Mhm.
Municipalities, customers, everything. Um, and we need to build companies with full transparency, and governments too. Yeah.
Right. Well, here's the question which I have. Since you mentioned that you're one of the values, you're building homes or apartments,
Yeah.
um, home in general for people, so they have a healthy, safe space for themselves, their families. When you buy a house, you use a chunk of money for that, or you get a loan, and you still keep paying tax, which means it's not yours. You technically can lose it at any time if, let's say, someone is sick or loses the job, right? The feeling of safety is not there.
True. True. But
Ha-
the problem
uh-huh.
there is a governmental concept. It's how we created a country, and it's a great conversation. Um, when you manage a country, most countries um, have a thread mill, which means you cannot stop. It's like a business, right? So if you own a house, you have annual payments, as you said, and the question you have is your house yours or
Exactly.
is it not? That's the question. Um, well, I would argue that it is yours, but it is also of the state. Essentially, if you manage it well, if you can pay to maintain it, it's yours. If you end up being broke, it's not yours forever. So government use time as a form of currency, um, and that time is always moving forward. So as time goes by, you have this commitment with government to pay what is already yours. Um, I mean, yeah, we could talk about the criteriums of taxation, how taxes work in countries. Um, I have a particular, vision on the matter. Um,
I would love to hear your vision.
sure, sure, I will. Well, it's as you said, um, the concept of a country, it starts with the concept of a country. What do you define as a country? When I enter a plane and I fly over my country, I don't see a borderline separating Portugal from Spain.
Mm-hmm.
There's no line over there, right? So why are people on my side Portuguese and the other guys on the other side are Spanish, right? And the second question is, what is the government? Like, why is that people managing the money or 50% of the money of the entire population, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the criterion of selecting them? You do votes. Is it the best way? Like, whoever's voting, are they aware of what they're doing? Right? And if you're voting for somebody, will that person do what they said when they were campaigning, right? So there's a set of questions that I still don't have an answer to. Our democratic systems, should we rethink the way they're prepared? What is the criterion to have people managing all of the money coming from the collective taxation of a country? In Portugal, that's probably like 50% of the annual income of everybody, right? In average, considering everything, all the taxes. And again, because when you look into the taxation system, let's say I'm paying one of my workers 2,000 euros a month. You pay 2,000 euros a month, but you need to pay social security to the person. And you need to pay taxes over that. So typically, if you look into the numbers, when you pay 2,000, the person receives 1,000, 1,200, something around there. And as the amount raises, the percentage is even bigger for the state.
Mm-hmm.
But the person receives the 1,000. So I spent 2,000 and the person received 1,000. But the $1,000 the person, 1,000 years the person has, they will, what will he do with the money, right? He needs to buy something. Let's say he's going to buy a car. If he buys a car, 50% is taxes in Portugal. Whenever you buy a car, you have two taxes. And combined, they generate almost 50% of that amount. So if he spends the $1,000 in a car, he only gets 500 of real money, right? Because the other half was paid. So out of the 2,000 that got out of my bank account of my company, the end customer got a real value of 500. And in order for me to have the 2,000 euros in my account, I was already taxed. There was already taxes over that, because in Portugal we got 23% IVA, which is tax over services, depending on what you're doing, obviously. What I mean with this, if you round the numbers and you do some basic math, let's say we have 50% taxation in the country in average, combining everything, right? So that means that out of the gross production of a year of everybody and all companies in the country, the state receives half of it. This is such a big amount that I think that there's a lot of questions we need to consider. Who should have the right to move that money? What kind of transparency needs to exist towards the population? Who are the ones putting the money there? And how should you run those decisions, right? And I would say that our governmental systems that we've created in a democratic system are interesting, but I think we should consider improving it. I think there's a lot of room for improvement in governmental management.
Oh, yes, for sure. And plus, as you mentioned, that each citizen in Portugal per se is like a shareholder of the government. So
right.
Why are you?
Every country. In every country, the citizens of each country are shareholders of the country, and they're forced to be shareholders of the country.
Yeah.
While if you create a company, you can be a shareholder and you can leave if you want.
Yeah.
If you're a citizen of a country, you cannot just leave if you don't want to be there, right?
You can take another citizenship, right? You can decline this one and take another one.
You need to get the other one first.
Yeah. But my question is, for example, if you are a shareholder of Coca-Cola or Apple, you get paid interest, right? If you're a shareholder of a country, you pay 50% or more of your income to the country.
That's another good question. Same question I have. you're a shareholder of a company. Well, the claim is that you're benefiting and getting out of the services that the country provides for free, right? Like free healthcare, free education. Those are the benefits of being a shareholder of your country. You get a collective set of goods that you benefit of using. And I agree with that. It's a collective, it's of collective value. Portugal offers free healthcare for everybody. And I'm a proponent of that. I think there's basic human needs that should be fulfilled, that we all have the responsibility to contribute towards it. If I'm lucky enough to be healthy, I'm happy to contribute and pay taxes in order to make sure that my fellow citizens have a treatment if they're sick, right? So it's a collective agreement that we're going to create an infrastructure. It's going to be paid by everybody. And then if somebody needs it, they use it for free. I'm a big proponent of human values being guaranteed by the government, by the collective group, and using that money. And I'm happy with that. Again, I think the concept of a country works pretty well if there's full transparency, okay, on how that money is being used, regardless how heavy taxation is within limits. I think transparency is critical, and corruption is the main problem.
Right.
Because if you don't have corruption and you have full transparency, as a business owner, I'm very happy to pay whatever within decent limits, whatever is necessary to ensure that my fellow citizens have, again, free education, free healthcare, good infrastructure. I'm happy to do that. And I think most business owners are, as long as we know that we're paying taxes that are being used properly and only for the benefit of the population and those in need. And that is synonymous, and that means that there should be no corruption or minimal corruption.
Right. Well, I cannot agree more with you. We do have a lot of similar issues, and you probably have seen in the news that our current government has discovered a lot of corruption schemes, and that was pretty, well, funny. My last question in this segment. I've seen multiple news outlets and interviews from European countries, including one of the recent interviews of Conor McGregor, who was sharing about the issues in the country, corruption as well, but mainly issues caused by illegal immigrants from Middle East or other countries, as well as migrants from the Ukraine because of the Ukrainian war. How is Portugal impacted, if it is impacted, and how do you see solutions?
Yeah, I see the world binarily. I believe there's good people and people who are not so good. But most of the people I've met in any country, they are good in their soul. So they want to be, they want the best for them and for the population. I don't see the world with nationalities. I don't see a world with Portuguese, Spanish, Americans. I see a world with good people and people who might not be as good. And I think it's binary. So I don't see a difference between a Portuguese and a Spanish. I see a world, the planet as a whole. We've created this concept of different countries. But again, as I said before, there's no line separating Portugal from Spain when you look into the map, right? So in the world, I see the world with humans and animals. And these humans are brothers in a species concept. So we're all brothers of one another. We share our genes very similarly, okay? And back in 2009, I did the genetic test of 23andMe. And when you look into your genome shows, your genome analysis, that you have ancestors from many different countries.
Yeah.
So I see a world where everybody who's a human deserves the same respect.
Right.
And then you have different social agreements. Portugal means that the government uses a different social agreement on what is public and what is private, right? Spain is more private or less, or more public or less public. I think what really matters is when you run a country or you run the world, you need to look into people and see that everybody deserves quality of life. And our role as entrepreneurs and as governments is how can we ensure that everybody has a decent quality of life? It's not a minimum quality of life, it's a decent quality of life. That means everybody should have a home. Everybody should have access to healthcare, access to food, a decent job, or at least a way to survive and maintain themselves, being socially connected. And we have a world with so much wealth. What is the difference for me to have a bank account with, one more zero? I would rather prefer to know that, the population around me is living in good quality of life, right? I think we lost ourselves a little bit in the search for creating wealth. The concept of creating wealth is only to make the world a better place for us and the loved ones and everybody on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
This is the reason why we create wealth. Because, if you look back, all of the billionaires that lived and died, what changed for them? To have, one more yacht or just, have 2 or 3 yachts, right? What I mean with this, I'm not criticizing billionaires for buying yachts. I'm just saying that you need to look into your priorities in life.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel good with yourself? How do you feel that you're doing and living a good life? For me, my values go for making sure that I'm healthy, making sure that I have everybody around me living in a good quality of life, my family, my friends, my business partners, and my country fellows, and hopefully, the world in general. And I believe that wealth exists to create good in the world. If we create a company that is wealthy, that money needs to be used to create more quality of life for people, right? And you can generate more wealth along the way. But when you create a company, you need to understand that wealth exists to make good in the world. And sometimes people get lost in this process of creating wealth, right? So you should look into wealth creation as a form to make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly why we created the event Unicorn Summit. Because we believe that creating a unicorn, you can create a unicorn that has an impact in the world. And whenever a unicorn is born, mostly technological unicorns, they make the world a better place. We're having this video call because somebody created a way to do, video calls from here to the US, right?
Right.
That company made the world a better place. It allows loved ones to connect with one another.
Well, let's specify we're not loved ones, we're just good friends.
Yeah. I mean, loved ones. Yeah, sorry for that. That was not the right timing. Sorry. I changed subject. I mean, good friends, but I meant loved ones because when I was in the US, I wanted to call my mother in Portugal and my family. I would pay, back in the days, I would pay, $1 per minute to do a voice call. Right now, I do a video call for free, right?
Yeah.
So when companies like Facebook or Skype or Zoom created voice over IP and platforms for video call, they're giving the population an improvement in quality of life. They deserve to be a unicorn. They deserve to get a lot of wealth, but hopefully they will see that wealth as a new empowerment to make the world a better place, to use that wealth to create new technologies, to make the world better for everybody. That's how I perceive wealth, because my values, my goal is really to make the world a better place for everybody. And that does not mean that everybody needs to be exactly with the same level, right? But it does mean that everyone on the world should have a decent quality of life. And again, house, food, access to healthcare, access to education, and a social structure where they are connected. If some people are not in that situation, we as entrepreneurs and governments should look into the problem and try to solve it.
Cannot agree more. I remember, I think it was Shaquille O'Neal who said that the best lesson he has learned in terms of investment is you invest in something that changes people's lives for better, right? Exactly. So with that advice in his mind, he says that he quadrupled his wealth and something like that. So, well, I cannot agree more. That's the same way I think we share this value. And since you've mentioned about the summit, let's talk about the summit. Sure. When, how was it created, and what is the goal for this upcoming one?
Yeah. So the Unicorn Summit came to be after 6 years. In the last 6 years, we've been organizing different events focused on specific topics. We've organized an event focused on longevity and the future of healthcare, a specific event for education, focused on the future of education, a specific event on transportation, another one in finance. And during the last 6 years, we realized that those events were contributing and having an impact.
Mm-hmm.
And so this year we decided to gather all of those small events into a bigger event.
Mm-hmm.
And the focus of the Unicorn Summit, and this is the first edition of the Unicorn Summit. So the Unicorn Summit is an event focused on gathering and bringing unicorn builders. For example, the brilliant Naveen Jain, who has an amazing company called Viome, and he's decoding the microbiome and again, making the world a better place, improving people's quality of life and opportunity to take care of their health, right? We bring, for example, Martin Rothblatt, the famous billionaire who created United Therapeutics. She was able to cure the disease of her daughter, and along the way created a multi-billion-dollar company called United Therapeutics. Another amazing woman, very well-deserved billionaire, and making the world a better place. Again, entrepreneurship with purpose.
Right.
Wealth created as a consequence of making the world a better place, right? And I could go on and on. I mean, we got the famous futurist Ray Kurzweil, who's absolutely brilliant. Jack McCulley from UC Berkeley, which we both know, a brilliant engineer.
Right.
Global entrepreneur from Booking.com, Jeff Hoffman, and many, many others. All of them have created or have been involved with unicorns or, in fact, impactful companies as investors, as entrepreneurs. And they will teach at the Unicorn Summit, they will teach the lessons they learned. What did they learn along the way of creating unicorns? And then we bring, entrepreneurs, many startups and entrepreneurs to learn from these brilliant, multimillionaires, billionaires who built these unicorns in order to help the existing current entrepreneurs with their startups understand how they can quickly or more rapidly reach unicorn level, right? And help them accelerate having an impact in the world. Typically, when a unicorn is born, again, if it is a technological unicorn, typically it means it solved a problem for a lot of people. That's why it's a unicorn, and that's why it's worth more than $1 billion, right? And that means the world's a better place, right? Because there's a new company who created a new technology or a new product or service that empowers a lot of people, right? And gives them better quality of life. And then we bring a lot of investors in order to help these promising future unicorns, these eager entrepreneurs, brilliant entrepreneurs that are starting their journey as entrepreneurs in their countries around the world, trying to solve local problems or global problems, and have their startup understand from these brilliant minds how they did it and take the best lessons from them, and then connect with investors that can help them invest and bring the money necessary to take their company to the next level, their startup to the next level. So that's the summary of the concept of the Unicorn Summit. How can you make the world a better place, one unicorn at a time? And how can you empower the young entrepreneurs by helping them learn from the elder and those that already had success creating unicorns with investors? Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. It feels like it has a very practical idea, practical use. I know that right now with, for example, Small Business Administration of the United States, their priority, like number one, is manufacturing. We are bringing manufacturing back into the US. What is your priority number one at the summit? Is it healthcare? Is it AI? What is your priority?
The focus of Unicorn Summit is really on how can we solve the 17 global development goals.
Okay.
How can we eradicate poverty? How can we solve the lack of water around the world? How can we bring housing for everybody? And this is not just for the developing countries. It's also for the countries like the US and Portugal, the developed countries, because we also face a lot of challenges, right? So it's really about how can we make the world a better place, starting with the 17 global development goals, and how can we inspire the new entrepreneurs to solve those problems and create wealth along the way, and use that wealth to generate new companies and solve new problems, right?
Right. Well, I'm sure that when Mr. Macaulay arrives, you will have a very productive, interesting conversation. I won't mention too much on air, but we've been involved together in a project which I was working over a decade, and it's connected to water. So um, water is, as one of my other mentors, Dan Peña, you could have heard of him. He lives in Scotland. Um, he says that water is going to be our next crypto value thing. So what other 17 issues are you aiming to resolve except of the water, poverty?
Look, we're seriously looking into all of them, actually.
Mhm.
The way we filter the companies that will be at the event and the startups is that we got startups tackling and looking into these 17 global challenges. And
Right.
we got speakers that, one way or another, are connected to have an impact on these different 17 global development goals. I
Okay.
mentioned Viome as an example. Naveen Jain's company, Viome, is really having an impact on personalized medicine.
Hmm.
Completely out of the box. It's a brilliant approach to preventive medicine, preventive healthcare. It's brilliant. We got Bob Richards with Planetary X, looking into how can we solve the environmental challenges we have today, right? And how can we create a world where we respect our planet, right? And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, right? As entrepreneurs are solving the problems regardless of what the problems are, right? It's about
Right.
looking to a problem and finding solutions. Yeah, we're seriously looking into the 17 global development goals and how these future companies can have an impact on all the 17 global development goals.
What's your take on poverty and wealth? And I will expand my question.
Sure.
I've read quite a few books of different entrepreneurs who succeeded in their life, and what they mentioned is it cannot be equally distributed. It depends on multiple different reasons. It doesn't have to be connected to any race or country. But for example, way of thinking. Some people just have poor way of thinking, and then they will be poor. And you can give them more wealth, and they will still be poor, right? And just economically wise, some people produce, some people consume, right? And it cannot be ideally reached. But what's your take on it?
My take is this. I've dealt with a lot of people. I've met thousands of people around the world.
I bet.
All of them, and I believe everybody, is brilliant. The people who are not inspired are not pursuing a life of purpose.
Mhm.
So you need to inspire people. Right? This started back when I was a student. And so when I finished my high school, I was 18. I said, why do I love math? And so many of my fellows, students don't like it. And the reason is they didn't see the beauty of it.
Mhm.
You need to show them why that's interesting. So instead of feeding people with information, inspire them. In my opinion, what's really important is to inspire people. The purpose of the Unicorn Summit is exactly to inspire people. Every single person I've known until today, during the last couple of decades, everybody was brilliant. Honestly, everybody. The difference was some were inspired and motivated, others were not.
Mhm.
And the question is, how can we inspire these people to have a purpose and pursue their purpose in life, right? That's what we're trying to do with the Unicorn Summit, is really to inspire them, showing them the brilliancy and how amazing the world of entrepreneurship can be, and how we can collectively contribute, collectively help make the world a better place, and also provide some support, because the entrepreneurial journey is really, really hard. To be an entrepreneur is really hard, right?
Yeah.
We all know about it. So the question is, how can you inspire people and give them the tools and the support, from networking to finance support, to help them pursue their purpose? Can you imagine if every single person in the world was pursuing their dreams? And this sounds utopian. It sounds like, oh, that's not even possible. It is. It is, especially in this moment in human history, because we have AI coming. And with artificial intelligence coming, we can finally outsource the tedious labor that we had so many people doing in factories. For many, many decades, we prepared our population to work on factories, right? Historically. Is that inspiring? People were doing it because they had to survive. The world that's coming is a world of abundance. It's a world where your basic needs are met via automation, via AI, via robotics. So with your basic needs met, people will be free to pursue their purpose. Is it painting? Is it playing music? Is it playing soccer? Is it being a scientist? Whatever it is, I believe that we can collectively create a world where everybody's free to focus on their dreams. And again, this may sound like utopian. It's not. And it's happening in the next couple of years / decades with the upcoming of AI and robotics.
Well, AI is already here. I don't know if you've followed any news outlets in Hollywood, but we had quite a few strikes of Hollywood community against that.
Right.
And well, people are afraid of something new. I get it, and they're kind of lazy to learn. I do find it really, really useful. At the same time, I would like to ask you. So you mentioned this example of people were taught to work at the factory.
Right.
And not just because they needed to survive, but someone likes to be a mechanic, so he goes and he builds a Lamborghini, right? Now with automation, we have less and less jobs. With AI coming even more powerful, less jobs are going to show up on the market. How do you see this abundance coming at the same time? Less jobs will be available for people to make money.
It all starts with the concept of a job. Why do you need a job?
Well, people use jobs to make money. Some people have mentality.
Why do you need money?
Well, to pay tax for live in the house that you buy, and you have to pay to the government for renting it.
To survive. You need money. Until now, you were required to work. You were forced to work if you didn't want to work, because you would need money to survive. You need to pay for food. You need to pay for shelter. You need to pay for your governmental services. And that makes sense because, being alive requires, a cost. You need to produce your food. You need to have, a shelter. You need to have healthcare. Somebody has to do it for you. Then that people have to pay something. So, but my question is, what if we have a world coming with robotics and AI that brings down the cost of these services nearly down to zero? Mm-hmm. Let me give you an example. What was the cost of communication 20 years ago? This phone call, how much would we pay for it? If we were doing it over the phone without voice over IP, how much would we pay for it? $1 a minute, let's say. Right now, completely free, abundant. We have free video communication, or nearly free, for everybody. Right? Cell phones, same thing. Cars. We have more quality of life today, or more capability of moving around, than kings had 200 years ago. If you were the king of England 200 years ago, you would not. The king didn't travel as much as I do today. And I'm not the king of any country. So how can I have so much abundance of mobility? Because the world improved and created a low-cost mobility solution, like cars, airplanes, and so forth. When I speak about abundance, I speak about, again, access to these kinds of services and products at a very affordable price. And we are experiencing this abundance right now, again, on communication, on transportation. If you look into one another, you don't compare yourself with people living 200 years ago. But if you think about 200 years ago, you see the difference between the quality of life today and back then, right? The access to healthcare and others. It's hard to understand the shift when we lived so many years in a concept of working to survive, right? A job was a concept that we were born with, saying, this is what it is. Why do people need to work with a job? People should not have a job. Everybody should have the opportunity to pursue what they love in life. Everybody should have the possibility of do what they love. If they want to play soccer all their lives, that's great. If they want to be a scientist, that's great. If they love to travel and be a reporter, that's amazing. And if you shift towards that society, you get so much more wealth. because that person will be much more productive because they're doing what they love instead of doing something that they're forced to do because they need money to pay rent. The question is, how do you shift from one world to another? With automation, using AI and robotics to automate the basic needs that everybody has. With AI and robotics, you have a lot of the stuff you pay today becomes free, right? With advanced AI and autonomous cars, you essentially have a driver. You need to be a millionaire today to have a full-time driver with you, right? If you have an autonomous car in a couple of years, you have your own chauffeur, right? And the cost is $25,000. Today, a chauffeur, you spend $25,000 a year just to pay the person, right? What I'm trying to illustrate and show is we can build in the next couple of years a world with abundance of products and services by automating many of the processes that were dependent historically on human labor. Now, how will we manage that and that wealth? It's totally up to us. But if we do it right, the world that's coming can be really, really interesting for everybody. Mm-hmm. If our focus is on the values and on the vision of creating a world of abundance for everybody, we can very soon live in a very interesting world. And at least what I'm a proponent is, I believe that everybody, you probably heard about the UBI, the Universal Basic Income, that everybody has, a basic income. I believe that we will live in the next couple of years / decades. We can live in a world where everybody experiences the life of a millionaire today, what I call universal millionaire income or universal high income. It does not mean people will be receiving money on their banks. It means that AI, robotics, and all the automation we're bringing into the world can empower people to have an abundance of services and products. Combine, for example, 3D printing with AI and robotics. What if you could 3D print whatever you need at your place with a 3D printer in your home? Abundance of objects. Whatever you imagine, you can create, right? What if you have an autonomous car serving you in your door? Whenever you want to move, the car will drive you. And this world is not radically different. So what I think we need to look into is, let's rethink our concept of society. Let's rethink our concept of jobs and how we perceive the world as a necessity to work. And let's ensure that everybody has their needs met with automation, robotics, AI, 3D printing, and other technologies that empower everybody to live in a world of abundance. And I'm not just talking about this. People can say, well, how can I eat? Think about vertical farming. We can produce food at extremely low cost and with an optimization of water, for example. Combining exponential technologies, again, 3D printing, AI, robotics, autonomous cars, vertical farming, and others, we can create a world of abundance for everybody. It's within reach. And that's when I believe we can rethink our concept of having to have a job, and we focus on enjoying life and doing what we love. And society as a whole will benefit tremendously from this change in concept of our lives today. That's my vision there.
Well, that's very interesting. I don't know if I'd want an automated car to drive me, because I do enjoy the process myself. And
you can do it. The beauty of technology, Victor, is that you can always come back and do it yourself, right? But if you don't have time, you want to read, you don't want to do it, you have the freedom to choose. So I believe technology empowers people to do what they love. And again, if you love driving, that's great. You can just disconnect the self-driving mode and you can drive it yourself. But the automation allows you to bring down the cost of driving people around and improves our transportation length and possibilities. If you just want to move around and you want to do something else in your car. But I totally agree with you. It's critical that with these technologies coming, you always have to respect people's wishes and allow people to decide what they want for themselves. I don't believe in a world where you impose these technologies to people. I believe in a world where you empower them and then they decide if they want to use these technologies or not. Totally agree.
Right. While you were sharing your thoughts, I just had a little visual in front of my eyes of Bruce Almighty when he got God's power and he said yes to everyone's wish, and it brought some chaos. Well, hopefully the world will turn into something good as you envision, because we do have, as you mentioned, some good people and some different. How do you see value of products with everything made by automation and robots? I'll give you an example. For example, watch lovers, right? You have a Patek Philippe handmade, or you have Aston Martin handmade versus Apple Watch, or versus something that is mass produced in a factory, right? Something holds value and people want it, and it's like rare, and it gives you a different feeling, versus something that is just mass produced,
Available to anyone.
Yeah.
I've never felt, I was never very compelled with objects. What really drives me in the world is, enjoying life, traveling, reading, going to the gym, enjoying time with my friends. So the things I love, I feel no need for material wealth. Honestly, I never did. My focus has always been on enjoying life, enjoying time. I think time is our most precious asset. And our loved ones are our most important assets again. So it's about time and people. So for me, life is about time and people and experiences. I would resume it that way. And I was never very interested in objects or even cars or whatever. But certainly, I mean, as you said, it's even in a world of abundance, creativity will be a great currency, right? How can you? But again, why do we need to compete with one another? Why do I have to have a better car than you, right? I would be happy if everybody had a Lamborghini, right? I'm happy with that. I feel joy when everybody around me is, even better than myself. And I think that altruism, that feeling of happiness for having everybody around you feeling well, is a source of enjoying life. It's a source of being well, and that's why I work. I work because I really want to create a quality of life for the people I love. And that group of people I love grows from, again, my direct family, my friends, my co-citizens, and my world species family, which is humans, right? So these different levels and encapsulate the people I want to see wealth and with good quality of life. And I'm not very much into the competition, but again, in a world of abundance, it would be fun to just see, who is able to do the best car or design the best watch, right? We can have fun doing a lot of stuff, but my time is committed and dedicated to improve people's quality of life. Again, my family, my friends, my countries, fellows, and the world in general. That's what really drives me forward. That's what wakes me up in the morning excited to do some new project or some new company.
I'm totally with you. My last question, you've mentioned quite a few ideas which to me sound more of a global level. It's not some local or regional. You want a global wealth for everyone. You want make the world a better place, is again global. How do you connect, or not, or you don't connect with the World Economic Forum, those folks who are calling themselves globalists and trying to push some ideas that are also global?
We have no connection with them so far. We would love to. And we're open to everybody and to talk with everybody. But so far, we haven't had any connection with them. Hopefully, we will be establishing that connection in the future.
Well, hopefully you will take over, because those guys show that they don't do anything good at all. With all the mass illegal migration, with all the nonsense that they do, it's just crazy.
I'm really not familiar with how it works, actually. I've never looked into it deeply. I've heard about them. Obviously, but I'm not well educated about the work they're doing. I've never looked into it deeply and understood, what they're doing in detail. But yeah, I mean, it's probably a different concept. But I'm honestly not familiar with the work they're doing, so I really can't say much about it.
Well, it seems that they don't do much. That's why I don't. If they were doing something significant, you would have definitely known about them. Well, Nuno, it was a pleasure. I hope that we will record a lot more podcast episodes with you, and I'll make sure to have our information distributed to multiple media to get it a better coverage. Thanks for coming on the show tonight. I wish you a nice rest of your evening, and we'll definitely talk soon.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much.